So what happens when a sacred story, something that's been passed down for literally thousands of years, gets turned into a mass-produced product you can just buy off a shelf? Today we are diving deep into this incredible story about art, about identity, and about the massive clash between ancient culture and modern law. And it all started with a single piece of fabric. Let's get into it.
Okay, just take a look at these two images for a second. On the left, you've got this beautiful, complex work of indigenous art. But it's not just a pretty pattern, It's a story. It's a map. It's basically a piece of cultural law. And then on the right, you see that exact same story, that same law, just copied onto fabric, without any permission, ready to be sold in stores. This one single act set off a legal battle that would seriously challenge how we even think about ownership.
So, to really get why this was so much more than just a simple copyright issue, we have to understand what this art actually means. We need to get a feel for the incredible depth behind the original work.
Now, this is what's so fascinating. This design, which comes from a famous case known as the Carpets case, isn't just a random piece of art made by one person. No. This image belongs to an entire group, the Rirajingu clan. It actually shows a sacred site and the journey of their creation ancestors. So the right to paint this story is deeply, deeply tied to land ownership and to cultural responsibility. It's almost like a visual title deed to a place and all of its history.
For the artist Banduk Marika, seeing her clan's story on a carpet wasn't just theft, it was desecration. In her own words, it caused great distress. Just try to imagine seeing your family's most sacred story, something that literally defines who you are, woven into a rug for people to walk all over. This was never just about the money, it was about protecting the very soul of her culture.
So, faced with this incredible insult, the artists knew they couldn't just let it go. They decided to fight back. They took the fight to the Australian legal system, and they used two very different legal tools to make their case.
All right, so the first and, the most obvious weapon in their arsenal was copyright. Australian law is pretty clear. It protects the material form of an original piece of art. The company copied the art without permission, so it was a pretty straightforward infringement case. This basically protects an artist's right to control their creation and, of course, make money from it. Simple enough, right? But there was another angle.
And this is where it gets really clever. The artists also used Australian consumer law. See, there's a rule, Section 18, that says a business absolutely cannot mislead or deceive its customers. And here's the kicker. It doesn't even matter if the business meant to lie. An honest mistake is no defense. The only question is, what was the lie?
Well, here it is. The company stuck a label on these carpets that claimed royalties were being paid to Aboriginal artists. And that was just completely false. The court looked at this and said, yep, that's a clear case of misleading conduct. They were tricking people into thinking they were buying an ethical product, that they were directly supporting indigenous creators when the exact opposite was happening.
And by the way, this law isn't just for these big, important cultural cases. It protects all of us, probably every day. Have you ever seen a super cheap flight advertised online, only to click through and find the price just keeps creeping up with hidden fees and surcharges? That's a tactic called drip pricing. And guess what? It's another form of misleading conduct that this exact same consumer law goes after.
So, the artists won. They proved both copyright infringement and misleading conduct. But this victory in court actually revealed a much, much deeper problem, a fundamental mismatch between Western law and indigenous culture.
Okay, so here's the absolute heart of the issue. Copyright law sees one author, right? One individual creator who owns all the rights. But under indigenous customary law, it just doesn't work that way. An individual artist might have permission to paint a story, but the story itself, the knowledge, the design, the history, that belongs to the entire clan. It's communal, not individual.
And this exact problem was put to the test in another huge case, Balloon Balloon v. R&T Textiles. In this one, an artist named Johnny Balloon Balloon had his painting of magpie geese copied onto fabric. Now, he held the copyright, but it was argued that his clan, the Ganal-Bingo people, were the traditional owners of the sacred knowledge inside the painting. So, who really owned it?
The court came up with a really fascinating solution. It said that, yes, the artist holds the individual copyright, but they also have something called a fiduciary duty to their community. Now, that's a powerful legal idea. It basically means the artist has an obligation, a responsibility, to act in the best interests of their clan and to protect that sacred knowledge in their art. They're more like a guardian or a steward, not just an owner.
And this table just lays it out perfectly. You've got these two worlds colliding. Western law is all about an individual owner, economic rights, a protection that eventually expires, and just the physical thing, the expression of an idea. But indigenous customary law, it's about community custodianship, cultural responsibility, obligations that last forever, and protecting the knowledge itself. It's like the law is trying to fit a round peg into a square hole.
So with the courts only able to go so far, it became pretty clear that the legal system had its limits. And that's when the market itself started to create its own solutions, trying to help artists and consumers figure all this out.
Two main tools popped up. First, you've got trademarks, which protect a brand and, this is key, can be renewed forever, offering the kind of perpetual protection that copyright just can't. And second, there are certification marks. These are special trademarks that guarantee a product meets a certain standard, in this case, authenticity.
And this thinking led to the creation of these two distinct labels. You have the label of authenticity for original artworks, and then the collaboration mark for licensed stuff, like merchandise, which shows there's an ethical partnership in place. They pretty quickly became a visual shorthand for, this is the real deal.
So the most important thing here is that these labels shift the power to the consumer, to you. They give you a clear, simple way to tell what's authentic art and what's an ethically sourced product. By looking for that label, you, the buyer, can help make sure that artists and their communities are being respected and paid fairly. It's a way to fight back against the whole knockoff industry.
But even with these legal victories and these clever market solutions, we're still left with some really tough questions. What can a system that's designed to protect property really do when it comes to something as deep as culture?
And for that, let's just go back to that very first carpets case. Remember, despite winning in court, despite being awarded damages, the artist got nothing, $0. The company was shut down and its director declared bankruptcy. So a victory on paper doesn't always mean you get justice in the real world.
And that brings us right back to the heart of it all. An elder, Mawalan Marika, once described these stories, this art, this land, as his people's backbone. Now, the law was able to punish a company for making a copy, but can it ever truly protect something so fundamental, the very backbone of a culture?
And really, that's the question I want to leave you with. When our laws are built around ideas of individual ownership and economic value, can they ever fully grasp or safeguard something that is communal, sacred, and absolutely timeless? It's a challenge that sits right at that fascinating and often fraught intersection of law, commerce, and culture.